TDX is one of the games of all time. There are a bunch of towers, maps, emotes, game modes, and farmers.
Got any defense?
But there is one more aspect of the game that is more important above all else, and that is power-ups. Let's get this out of the way. Power-ups will be ranked from S tier all the way to D tier. There are mainly 2 factors and 1 minor factor, which I'll use to help rank these power-ups. First is how good they are in game, pretty self-explanatory. The second is how easy they are to obtain. Are they purchasable using gold? And how cheap can they be bought? Are they given for free as rewards at the end of game modes? These are the 2 main factors, but the third minor factor is how frequently you can use them. Some can be used infinitely, others are completely disabled. This is only a minor factor because in the main game modes, you really only use the power up once or twice anyways, and in Endless, you can use them infinitely. Also, this is entirely my own opinion, and obviously there may be some power-ups that are ranked differently compared to what you might put. So, just calm down if I rank something too low. Well anyways, let's start tier listing these power-ups. So, you are in the middle of the game, and you set up your defense, and all is going well. That is, until the first hit-ins arrive. And you forgot to have hidden detection. But don't worry, Recon Drone is here to save the day. Kinda. Recon Drone is a pretty simple power-up. All it does is reveal stealth enemies for 3 minutes. This can be pretty useful in certain loadouts that don't get hidden detection early on, like the helicopter. But that's kind of it. Most early game towers in TDX can get hidden detection very easily, which doesn't make Recon Drone that useful in the early game. And in the late game, there are a lot of towers that either have hidden detection or can simply reveal stealth enemies for other towers. It also doesn't help that you can only use it twice in a single game. But with that said, it's still very good when it is used in the right circumstances, like Wave 13 on Elite mode. And it is also the cheapest power-up in the game. However, it is not necessary to use it if you are using a good loadout. B tier. Are you tired of your towers being groomed by a predator? Well, throw a healing circle on the tower that's about to get groomed, and watch them be immune to damage. Well, that would be if it was actually good. Healing Field is one of the power-ups of all time. It's basically Medic and top part Shotgunner fused into one. Not only that, but the Healing Field even heals the warship. Somehow. And it isn't even that good. First off, the Healing Field is useless in the early game, since enemies early on basically don't deal much damage, or even do damage at all. Plus, the Medic is more than enough anyways. And when it comes to the late game, many bosses have insta-killing attacks, which the Healing Field can't save. Now against non-lethal attacks, sure, the Healing Field works, but most of the time, the Medic will just do better, since it can heal from a large range, and is way more consistent, since it doesn't expire like the Healing Field. Plus, there's the XWM turret, which doesn't need healing since it can, well, rebuild itself. Now, it is pretty cheap to buy and can be spammed, but there's only one situation where the Healing Field is useful, which is the Eradicator Mark II Plus boss fight. Other than that, just use the Medic and save your gold for other power-ups. C tier. Did you lose a bunch of health?
Hell no, man.
Well, here's the health crate. Alright, let's go through why this crate is garbage. For one, leaking enemies and taking damage does not give you any cash. which means you may not be able to place more defenses, leading to more leaks. And 2, base health scales horribly the later the game goes. Enemies in the mid to late game can basically one-shot your base due to their high health. And you know what's even worse? You can't even use the health crate for the first 10 waves. Thanks, Sean. Now the health crate isn't completely useless, since it can come in clutch at times. But honestly, just use other power-ups and kill them before they get to your base. The health crate at the very least is spammable and cheap to buy, but it's better to forget about them. C tier. Now this is a real power-up. Cash Crate simply gives 1,500 cash, but oh boy, it is game-changing in 2 ways. First off, if you have a golden mobster or farm, instead of placing down 2 farms, now you can place 6. Instead of a level 0 golden mobster, now you can get the 0-2 upgrade, instantly gaining cash at wave 1 instead of at wave 4. This extra cash can then be invested into more farms and golden mobsters, which then earns even more money, and now you have much more money in the late game, just because of a single cash crate. That's not all though. Cash crate also leads to certain towers being usable in the early game, such as machine gunner, artillery, and helicopter, which are not cheap to place initially. This can lead to a wide variety in how you can approach the early game, and it is great. Cash crate is pretty much the most essential power-up in this game. It drastically alters your early game, all for the low price of 1,000 gold. The only bad things about the cash crate is that it isn't good in the mid to late game, and you can only use 2 of them in a single game, which kinda sucks, but it isn't a major issue. S tier. Are there a group of enemies you absolutely hate? Well, fear not. Just send a single bomb and wipe them off the face of the earth.
Bruh.
The Airstrike is the first offensive power-up on this list, and is pretty much the weakest. That makes sense considering airstrikes are pretty cheap as well. And unlike those power-ups, you can choose where to send the airstrike to. It's pretty effective at dispatching groups of low health enemies, but that's about it. It only deals 3,000 damage, which doesn't even one-shot the super heavy titans. And even then, there are way better power-ups that can defend much more easily while only costing a little bit more, and also don't fall off in damage as much. That being said, it is a pretty common reward when you beat game modes, so you will have a few of these lying around. And it is also convenient that you can spam these whenever you want. I'd say use these when there are leaks, or if you have no crowd control and have to deal with a horde heavy wave. B tier. Drop Pod is the most recent power-up added as of the making of this video. And let's get this out of the way. Drop Pod is probably the most overpowered power-up in this game. For only 1,750 gold, you get 3 troopers that have more health than an Abrams tank, deal a crap ton of damage, have a lot of range, along with being able to ignore resistances, and detect stealth. Here's the thing, with other power-ups, you still need some form of early game defense, since they only last for a single instance, or will expire eventually in a few seconds. The Drop Pod is not like this. They are just like barracks rail troopers, but on drugs. If you use Drop Pod as early game defense, it can defend up to wave 27 on expert mode, which is wild. At that point, you should already have maxed out farms, and now you can place late game towers everywhere. Drop Pod is the power creep of power-ups. Health crate giving 1,000 HP? Dude, the troopers from the Drop Pod have 15,750 HP. They also deal a total of 3,600 damage every 2 seconds. That's an airstrike worth of damage. Now with that said, Drop Pod still has a few glaring issues. First, it doesn't have flying detection, so you still need an AA turret or something. Second, it performs worse on shorter maps, as the troopers won't be given more time to shoot. And third, it has no crowd control. But still, this power-up is done because of how cheap it is, and the fact that half of expert mode is basically made irrelevant thanks to this. To make best use of the drop pod, place it at the back of the map at the start of the game, and skip every wave from there on. Oh, and you can only use 2 drop pods, but that doesn't matter when it is so overpowered. S tier. A10 Strike. This power-up is pretty nuts. It deals a ton of damage that shreds through mid-game bosses, and also has a ton of crowd clearing potential. This on its own wouldn't be that special, as there are a lot of power-ups on this list that do the same thing. The big difference though is that it only costs 2,000 gold. That's only like 750 more cash than the Airstrike, but the Airstrike does 3,000 damage, while the A10 does 150,000. Bruh. The insane value you get for something this cheap is just super insane. Press this button on early game bosses and they'll get eviscerated.
Look at all this damage!
You can only use it once in a regular game, but still, it has a combination of high damage, cheap price, and is also rewarded very frequently from game modes. S tier. AC-130 support. Press a single button, and now it constantly shoots and destroys everything in sight. Epic! The AC-130 is a pretty nice power-up that shoots for 45 seconds, and destroys most waves with ease. It's pretty convenient since you can skip a few waves and the AC-130 will carry through most of them. You can also have 2 AC-130s shooting at the same time in the air, which is pretty cool, and it also shreds crowds really quickly. Essentially, it is kind of like the inverse of Drop Pod. While Drop Pod can stay on the map for a very long time, it suffers from no flight detection and isn't good on short maps. The AC-130 on the other hand does have all detections and works on all maps, but doesn't have the potential to last indefinitely. It does have a slightly pricey cost of 3,500 gold, but at the same time, it is also rewarded pretty frequently. I recommend using the AC-130 in short maps, since for long maps, it's better to use the drop pod. S tier. Advisor, can we have a Super Monkey Storm? No, we have a Super Monkey Storm at home. Super Monkey Storm at home. Raptor Storm is kind of like Super Monkey Storm from BTD6, but kinda worse. It is basically a bunch of bombs being thrown everywhere on the map. It costs around 2.5 times more expensive than the A10, whilst only dealing like 1.4 times more damage. It's still really good since it wipes out hordes much better than the A10, but the A10 is more worth your money. I don't have much to say about this power-up other than the fact that we have a Super Monkey Storm in TDX. A tier. PunkBuster Missile. Instead of dealing a huge amount of damage, why not just stop them from moving instead? Well, the PunkBuster is basically like that. It stuns for a total of 15 whole seconds, and this includes bosses as well, which is very nice. In some cases, this stun may actually be better than most other power-ups. Let me explain. If you have 40 max top half XOEMs, you are dealing a total of 660,000 damage while it is stunned. And that's just 40 XWMs. Combine it with golden jugs, helicopters and warships, and now it could do more damage than most power-ups indirectly. The PunkBuster is especially useful if you don't have slammers, golden rangers or golden mine layers. Just make sure to use it against bosses. The PunkBuster would have been amazing if it went for one flaw. It's disabled on most game modes. So you are unfortunately gonna use this on Endless only. Sad. A tier. Massive Ordnance Air Blast. Wait, that name is boring. It should be the mother of all bombs. Okay, I'm gonna be real, this power-up is extremely garbage. Essentially, the power-up sends out a plane that releases a massive bomb that does 350,000 damage. This is about 2 A10s worth of damage. However, while 2 A10s cost 4,000 gold, the M.O.A.B costs 20,000. Yeah, the value is kinda but at least the M.O.A.B is good against crowds. The problem is that the A10 and PunkBuster have much better value against single enemies and bosses, while for crowds, Raptor Storm is usually enough. Even if you need a lot more crowd control, there is a power-up coming next on the list which is much better at fulfilling what the M.O.A.B does. As much as I like the name, this power-up is just not that great. It isn't as bad as half the power-ups on this list, but there are better options. B tier. Do you want to get rid of bosses? Well, just use a massive nuke that does a catastrophic 4 million damage, pretty much one-shotting most bosses with ease. Even though its cost is very high at 50,000 gold,
can we get much higher? So high. Oh.
And can only be rewarded in Wave 200 Endless, it's nonetheless an absolute unit of a power-up. However, practically speaking, you will not use this power-up for most of the game. Only in Endless and the last wave of Expert mode. But when used in the correct situations, it does a comical amount of damage that it ends certain difficult waves without any issue. Honestly, there isn't much else to say. It's a funny one-shot button of doom. A tier. Golden Z is the first event power-up on this list. When summoned, it blasts everything in its range for 10k DPS, along with having extremely large amounts of health. Assuming it shoots for at least 20 seconds, it deals 200,000 damage, along with 75,740 splash damage and 50,000 collision damage. That is almost the same as the M.O.A.B's damage. But unfortunately, Golden Z can't be bought with gold, unlike the M.O.A.B. The only way you can get this is by beating Tower Battle's Nightmare, which, let's be real, most players have a skill issue. Plus, it isn't guaranteed to be rewarded in the end.
Aw, dang it.
So, is Golden Z good to compensate? Well, it is pretty good in the early and mid game with its high damage, and is especially amazing on long maps. But otherwise, it's outclassed by other power-ups. Drop Pod and AC-130 are much better early game power-ups, and in the late game, the Nuclear Missile and PunkBuster are more useful. B tier. This power-up sure is something, I guess. Stryker Rush summons 3 APCs that each have 800 health. All they do is ram across enemies, and that's about it. Now in terms of power, it is better than the health crate by more than double. But the problem is that health crates can be bought with gold, while Stryker Rush can't. Seriously, the only way you can get the Stryker Rush is through the Tower Battle's Battle Pass. But once you use all the Strikers from the Battle Pass, you basically lose it forever. Not sure why this power-up is never rewarded in any of the game modes, including Tower Battles. Like, come on. Not only that, but Drop Pod is objectively better in every way. It has more health, can be bought with gold, and can shoot from range. Please don't use this at all and just keep it as a trophy or something. D tier. Are you not able to freeze bosses fast enough? Well, just create a laser beam that freezes everything. Cryo Blast is the last power-up on this list, and what it does is deal a bit of damage and also makes freezing enemies easier. including bosses. However, it can't freeze mid to late game enemies by itself, so you need freezing towers to compensate. Unfortunately, as of this video's release, freezing towers are not in a great spot, and Cryo Blast is only good when freezing towers are good. You can still get the Cryo Blast on the Xmas game mode, but it's difficult to get, and the power up is not really worth it anyways. C tier. And that was the entire Powerups tier list. Now obviously this is mostly my own opinion, and as such may be different to yours. This video took a very long time, and was started around 3 months ago. As such, there may be some inconsistency both in the editing and also how I rank the power-ups. I would have liked to clarify some parts more, like in the healing field, but the video has been delayed for too long, so I didn't bother. If it looked like I didn't explain certain power-ups well enough, this is the reason why. Well anyways, hope y'all enjoyed the video despite those issues. I'll see you next time.